Hello, good evening. Hello and welcome to the Student Stemette webinar on finding schemes for you. Student Stemette is supported by the Born to Be Deutsche Bank Youth Engagement Programme. We have 4 presenters keen to share their advice and guidance with you, and you can follow along and join the conversation by using the hashtag STS14. Please post your questions for the presenters using the hashtag or in the chat box on your screen. Our first presenter is Lizzy Johnstone. Lizzy is a 4th-year PhD student in the Laboratory for Scientific Computing at the University of Cambridge. Lizzy's research is in the numerical modelling of explosives and detonation. For A-level, she studied maths, further maths, physics, and French, and went on to study maths at university. It was at university where Lizzy became interested in the mathematical modelling of real-world phenomena. Funding from the Lloyd's Register Educational Trust helped fund her master's, and funding from Eureka Mining Services is funding her PhD. Lizzy joined us from Cambridge. Welcome, and over to you, Lizzy.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me and see me? Right. Hi everyone. I'm Lizzy. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about finding funding and schemes in academia. So the first thing I want to talk about is planning ahead. So you might not know, no matter what stage of your career you're at, you might not know what it is that you want to do. I certainly still don't, and I'm coming to the end of my PhD. When you're an undergraduate, summer holidays are really useful for that because you can spend some of your time, say a month or so out of your 3-month holiday in a lab, trying to figure out what it is that you do want to do, or worst case scenario, what it is that you don't want to do. Even if that's the outcome, it's still useful information. In order to get internships, what you really need to do is to meet people. And while you're an undergraduate, you will meet lots of people who are working in the field. That's the great thing about university. You'll have lecturers, you might have small group tutors. The useful thing to do is to search for them on the internet, find out what it is that they do, see if that's something you're interested in, particularly if the course that they're teaching you is something you're interested in as well. And just talk to them about it. See if they, or if it's a PhD student who's teaching you, their academic supervisor might have an interest in taking on undergraduate researchers over the summer. And this doesn't have to cost you money. Lots of places in the sciences will have enough money sort of floating about within their funding to research, to basically allow you to not make a loss on your month spent in a lab. So they'll have enough money to help pay for your rent and for your food while you're up there. So meeting people is really, really useful, and talking to people and asking questions of people will often actually throw up funding opportunities. Something to note when you're thinking ahead about what you want to apply for. If you're an undergraduate, your first year exam results, you might feel like they don't necessarily matter. But if you've done your first year and you're applying for internships in the summer after your second year, people want to know what you've got. So if you're capable of aiming for a 2-1 or above, and hopefully if you're looking to go into academia, that's what you should be aiming for, then it's a good idea not to just write off the first year exams as not mattering and just saying just scrape by if your overall grade will come out of a sort of cumulative weighted thing, because you still want to be able to put as good a grade as possible on your CV when you're applying to various internships with people that you might not necessarily know. In terms of postgraduate study, getting funding for that, really important is knowing when the deadlines are. because lots of courses might have deadlines sort of in the March to even July range for starting in the September or October. However, lots of funding bodies will have deadlines that might even be December or January. So knowing when those are is really, really important if you want to get any sort of money from various research councils and funding bodies. Lots of universities will have a page with different funding bodies and when their deadlines are, sort of as a summary page, which is really, really helpful. So again, just the internet is your friend, and you can do lots of research online to find out what it is that you need to know. So once you've got funding, what does it let you do? How much can you get? Well, so funding is going to let you pursue your studies with no personal expense, which is obviously the crucial thing. Lots of competitive PhD places will come with funding, for example, from the European Research Council or from, say, a charity like the Wellcome Trust. However, master's places are much less likely to come pre-funded, particularly from research councils, because there is no longer any funding from sort of government bodies for master's courses. The research master's that is part of a sort of a 1+3 PhD, that they have funding for, but something that's a standalone master's, even if that standalone master's is, well, I'd like to do a PhD in this lab afterwards, you're unlikely to get any government funding whatsoever. But you might well find that there is funding that is around that isn't advertised. So if you find a course that you like and a supervisor who is interested in taking you on, ask them about funding, because they will have spent, several years finding funding for various students who will have passed through their lab. So they're the most likely to know who might be interested in funding you, whether it's a company or a charity. They'll be best placed to point you in the direction of some funding. So if you find a course you like that doesn't have anything about the funding options, talk to the course director, because that's what they do. In terms of money, for a master's course, the course fee is going to range somewhere within £7,000 to £12,000 for the course itself. This varies depending on the university, depending on the course, etc. And that's if you're a UK student. If you're from overseas, it will be significantly more than this. And then, of course, you need to consider living costs. Most research councils, if you're doing a 1+3, your stipend for your living costs will be in the region of £13,500 for a year. But it is obviously possible to live on less than that. So figuring out where this funding is going to come from is pretty important, and you can often find funding from different bodies that will ask for different things in return. For example, you could get one trust to fund your course fees, and then another, say, a company to fund your living costs, and in return, the company funding your course fees might want, updates on your progress, and you can do various meet and greets and explain what you're doing and why it's beneficial for that company, etc. Whereas the company funding your living costs might want your research specifically to benefit them. So it's important to just realise that you can get funding from different places and they will want different things from you. Finally, something to think about when you're applying for all of this sort of funding is keeping your private life and professional life separate. And in the age of the internet, this can be quite difficult to do. I told you that you might want to Google your lecturers or tutors. They can do the same to you. It's really important to remember this. And things you put on the internet can stay there forever. So it's really, really useful to just search for yourself every so often to check for what comes up. If you had, say, a Tumblr or a blog when you were 13 or 14, you might want to check that that's locked and people can't see it, because what you write when you're 13 or 14 doesn't reflect necessarily particularly well on you when you're 18 or 20 or older, and you want to make sure that that's not going to cause you any problems. And similarly, things like Facebook, what photos can be seen, there are lots of different privacy settings that I'm sure that gets talked about all the time, but it's just really important to realise that people can look you up, and it may well be that if you're within a small university, you might have friends of friends who know the lecturers, and that sometimes changes the privacy system. So it's really, really useful to just check in that every now and again what it is that you're putting on the internet and what people might think about what you're putting on the internet. Even something like Twitter, if you have a personal Twitter account, just every time you tweet, you've got to balance what it is you're saying versus what it is people will see, and whether you think what you're going to say is going to cause you any issues in the future. So it's a balancing act, really. Yeah, and I think that's kind of most of what I wanted to say about getting funding for academia.
That's great. Thank you very much, Lizzy, for sharing those bits of information with us there. Made some very good points. If you please stay on the line, and we'll introduce the next presenters. And if you have a question for Lizzy, please post that in the chat or put that on Twitter with hashtag STS14. Thank you for the moment, Lizzy, and we'll hand over to the next presenters shortly. Our second and third presenters are Yolanda, Bullen, and Sophie Hutchins. Yolanda is a hardware engineer and Sophie is a graduate antenna engineer, and both work for Selex ES. Thank you very much for joining us. Selex ES is a global leader in electronic and information technology, providing solutions for defense, systems, aerospace, data management, and land security and protection. Yolanda and Sophie join us for today. Welcome, and over to you both.
Thank you, you all can hear us. I'm Yolanda. Just tell you a bit about how I joined the company and the team that I'm on. So I did my A-levels, which were in maths, physics and electronics. I then joined the company Selex in 2012 on the Apprentice scheme. As a part of this, and you're on the technical apprenticeship scheme, you move around departments to start. So first year you're full-time at college. Sorry, we just heard that you can't hear us. Move a little bit closer. Is that? That's all right now. So the first year is full-time at college. So the first year is full-time at college, and beyond that, the next 3 years are part-time at college. So from there, you'll end up with a HNC in electronics, which you can quite often extend onto a degree, which is what I'm planning to do. Your time within work, you rotate around the department. So at the moment, I've been in hardware, mechanical, software, systems. So you get to know a little bit of each department. I know it can be a bit daunting coming from school and not really knowing what type of engineering you'd like to do. And from this, I've now secured my final placement in hardware. I'm going to spend the next 2 years working there. We also have another scheme at Selex, which is the craft apprenticeship. It's a lot more hands-on, whereas what I do is very computer-based, it's designing. Some people like the hands-on aspect of engineering, which our company, and I know many others as well, offer a scheme similar to ours. But for me, the apprenticeship has just been fantastic. It's the experience of learning at the same time as working. So you learn one thing one day at college, the next day you can apply it to some real life work that you're doing at Selex, which has been fantastic for me to do and to learn about. And just lastly, just say I think the most memorable thing for me was in my first week we went to IS Conningsby, and we got to sit in the Eurofighter Typhoon, which I thought was a fantastic experience. And there's not many jobs out there that you can do that with. So if I hand over to Sophie, she'll tell you a bit about the graduate scheme and how she got on it.
Hi everyone. I'll shout as well and get very close. So all throughout school, I really liked science and maths, that kind of stuff. So when I got to A levels, I chose to do physics, maths, further maths, biology, chemistry. Because I didn't know what one I liked the most, I just did all of them. Because at A level you get to do more in-depth kind of stuff. So by the end of that, I kind of found that I really enjoyed doing physics. So I decided to do a physics degree. So I did a physics degree for 4 years, so that's an integrated master's. So you don't graduate at the end of 3 years, you keep going on for 4 years, and then you get a master's at the end. And during that time, I did some work experience during my summers. So I went to the Met office and did some scientific software programming stuff. Lots of statistics and making pretty graphs of the maps of the UK and all different rainfall and stuff like that. But that's all really good experience for when you need to apply for jobs. What employers really look for is if you have good work experience and if you've done something outside of just your studies as well. So if you've done clubs and societies at university, if you've held any kind of position of responsibility, so something like being the captain of a particular sports team, or there are all sorts of things like being a secretary or a president. There's so much you can get involved with at university to give you those kind of skills. So yeah, after that, I kind of got to the end of my degree and I kind of thought, okay, so what do I want to do? And I'd kind of always kind of thought, oh, I might do a PhD, but then by the end of my degree, I kind of found that although I enjoyed doing all the experimental physics, I wanted to actually reapply it to the workplace. So I started just applying for jobs that would accept physics, really. They were engineering jobs, quite a lot of engineering jobs accept physics. And things like medical physics, all sorts of things like that I applied for. But in the end, I got a job with Selex. So yeah, applying for jobs, that was you have to really dedicate a lot of time to do that. If you don't spend a long time on the application, they can really tell that you haven't bothered. And if you haven't researched the company very much as well, they can tell that you're not really that interested in the company and you won't get any further with the application. So you have to kind of dedicate a lot of time, which is really hard when you're still studying, especially in your 4th year when you've got so much work on. It's really hard to dedicate that time to it, but it's also really important to do that. So yeah, actually being at Selex on the graduate scheme. So the graduate scheme with this company is for 2 years. You go in as an engineer. I came in as a test engineer. Then sort of 6 months, I found I didn't really enjoy that so much. So I changed role to antenna engineer, and I really enjoy that now because it applies what I learnt in the physics degree a lot more. So you've got plenty of chance. It's not just this company, but all companies. They often do rotations around different departments. And you don't even have to stay in engineering. You could do something in finance or sales and marketing, kind of whatever you want, just to try things out, really. So this graduate scheme is for 2 years, and what you do is you have different modules as well within those 2 years, where you meet up with all the graduates from across all the different sites that we have. And it's mostly for learning soft skills, which is kind of like team working, learning about what your personality is and how you fit in to a team and what your kind of role is in a team. It's not kind of like a hierarchical kind of role, like you're the team leader, but how your personalities fit and how you actually get along and work with people. We've also done things like learning about how the business works and how all different finance things work. all sorts of crazy numbers like bits that I've never heard of before. And then you actually get all your engineering knowledge from your days off. But basically, the graduate scheme is just a 2 years window where you have a chance to. So you get a chance to, because you come out of university and you've just got this really theoretical sort of knowledge, especially doing physics and engineering. Graduate scheme is a chance where everyone knows you're a graduate and they're going to be very nice to you, and you can ask all the stupid questions and you can actually learn how to do this job and how to apply all that knowledge. And it's a chance to find out what you like as well by rotating around the company. But there's, so that's what you can do in Selex, but it's a typical scheme. That kind of scheme is what you'll find in any kind of engineering company, really. And then, even if you don't want to do engineering, there are similar schemes for all different types of jobs.
We've just had a question through, and we're not too sure whether we answer them now or at the end.
I think what we'll do is we'll try and, can you hear me, Sophie? Can you hear me, Yolanda? I think what we'll try and do is we'll answer the questions at the end if we can. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think just to round up, so we've both done maths and physics at A-levels, and it's taken us different routes. I think the main thing just to enforce here is that any STEM subject can take you anywhere you want if you apply it. Whether that is in the engineering field or the physics field, it can take you wherever you want it to. So I think that's all from us. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll hand you back over then.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we'll come back to those questions at the end. If you can stay on the line, that would be fantastic. Our fourth presenter is Anne-Marie Imafidon. Anne-Marie is head Stemette, founder of Stemette, and assistant vice president at Deutsche Bank. Anne-Marie joins us from London. Welcome, and over to you, Anne-Marie.
Your line is now unmuted.
Thank you, Andrew. And hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for listening so far on the webinar. And I've been watching the tweets, so thank you very much. Hope I'll give you guys some nuggets. So I don't know how many of you are aware of my kind of day job, I guess, when I'm not moonlighting as head Stemette. I actually work in Deutsche Bank at the moment within technology and communications type technology. And as Andrew said, I'm an assistant vice president. My career journey started, my kind of serious, I guess, career journey started when I was 16 years old, so kind of the same age as you guys, and maybe a little bit younger than a couple of you. And I was on a scheme being run in London called the Windsor Fellowship, which meant that there was an internship that they were running at that point, so kind of A-level, for A-level students, to come in and spend some time at Deutsche Bank offices. And so my career journey started then. And I remember way back then, kind of trying to put myself in your shoes. That was my first ever interview I'd ever had for anything. So I kind of wore my suit, that, as I heard you're supposed to, and I'd seen in movies, kind of sat at this big round table, and found it a really interesting experience. And, you know, the rest is history, I guess. I got the job. I did other internships after that. So I've interned. I did a work experience week actually at HP a long time ago. I've interned also at Goldman Sachs, interned at Lehman Brothers, interned at JP Morgan. So I kind of went down the kind of banking route, but did banking, having studied, sorry, I'm not doing this properly, having studied maths and computer science at university, and then went around the banking technology route. And so for me, my kind of personal journey of internships, which I know is what some of you are listening out for, is that an internship, for me, internships since the beginning have been ways for me to kind of narrow down what it is that I wanted to do. So when I did that first internship, I'd never actually heard of Deutsche Bank before. I think I almost ended up being on a technology desk by chance, but while I was there, I used it as an opportunity for me to understand a little bit more about what was going on within Deutsche Bank, understand a little bit more about what my role was, but also to make sure that I understood the roles of the people that were around me and all over. So what I wanted to do in kind of my 20 minutes, 15 minutes, was talk to you guys about the kind of 3 stages of making the most of an internship or of a bursary or of a scholarship or of an apprenticeship or even of a graduate role or an award. And so I've divided this up into 3 different stages. So the first is finding these kind of opportunities. They are out there and they do exist. And in the work that we do on the Stemette, we talk to a lot of companies who are struggling to find people like yourselves to fill the positions that they've got. So there are kind of 2 ways, depending on what type of person you are, to find these schemes. The first one is to be incredibly proactive and to go out and kind of find them. And so at the very top, Lizzy spoke about using the internet and Googling and searching. There's definitely a really big way of finding things. If you know what interests you, so you might know that there's a job existing, but if you know that there's a particular part of, being an antenna engineer, for example, that interests you, or any other kind of obscure, maybe where biology meets computer science that interests you, Google it, search on Twitter, look for other people that are doing that, look for companies and that kind of do that as well, and follow them on Twitter, follow them on social networks. So I know Accenture has a really active Twitter account where they post up their apprenticeships, their graduate schemes, when they're doing different events. Microsoft also tweet them out quite a lot. Of course, follow the Students of Stemette Twitter account where when we're sent these opportunities, we tweet them out from there as well. And even if you're not going to post anything on Twitter, do follow and do curate a good list that's going to serve you up those opportunities that you can go back and then check through for those opportunities. There's also different websites that offer them as well, and especially if we're talking around STEM, Eve Cracker or Go Cracker, so kind of sister sites, have a lot of profiles, but they also have a lot of competitions, a lot of events, a lot of opportunities up on their website. I don't know how many of you will have heard of the Your Life campaign as well, that's being run by government at the moment to kind of increase the number of opportunities within STEM. And again, Your Life is about to launch actually, so it's launching kind of nationwide in November, but the website is already up. So if you go to yourlife.org.uk and have a look there, there are kind of a lot of companies across STEM that you might be interested of, some you might have never heard of, who are pitching opportunities, kind of increase their intake for internships or for graduate schemes, or are now offering bursaries or scholarships as a part of their pledges for the whole Your Life campaign. So do go and have a look on, and you can search through that now as well. So again, if you want to be an antenna engineer, for example, you can go on there and search for antenna engineer. So that's a really good resource. There's also a website called Big Ambition, which again is another website run by, I think it's eSkills, but they have different STEM related opportunities for 14 to 19-year-olds, although you can stretch that a little bit if you wish. I've got a lot of opportunities up there. There's also Go Think Big is another one, and they put up work experience opportunities and different cool things that you can go along to that you can then use to build those relationships. There's also, I've got this here with me actually, I went to go meeting them a couple of weeks ago, the Royal Commission for the Exhibition of 1851, and these guys do bursaries, and they give money to people that are studying or that are having certain pursuits, so check them out. I think they've got a website, it's not on here, but if you Google it, Royal Commission for the Exhibition of 1851, they've got a lot of opportunities. There's also the obvious one, the career fair shows, when they do public lectures. There's one that we tweeted about, I think just last week, with the new head of engineering, I think it is, at Cambridge, doing a lecture. There's also science festivals. And when you go along to these events, you can go along as a member of the public to enjoy yourself, but you can also go along to kind of pester some of those companies and say, really be interested in something. What do you have? What can you do? Even if you don't have a particular question just come in. Even if you've got if they don't have a particular scheme, you want to kind of pester them and say, hey, I'm here, I'm really interested. What do you have for me? The other people to go to are your chartered institute. So I know for engineering it's IET, for computer science it's BCS. Often they pride themselves on having their own kind of academies or their own schemes where they give opportunities, where they fund people that are interested in doing further research, or where they help people with funds if they're going to do an internship and need some money for board, or where they, help publicize internships as well in themselves, or apprenticeships. So those are people to look to. Another two that I want to list off, sorry, I've got on my list. Talent 2030 is another website. They run competitions as well from time to time and have a lot of resources. And then Future Morph is another one. So that's the kind of just throwing a couple websites at you of different sort of resources that have things across the whole continuum, so across science, technology, engineering, and maths. Milk Crowd, I don't know if I mentioned that as well, I've got that here on the list. So those are the kind of, if you want to proactively go and find schemes and you want to be kind of searching and you want to say, hey, this Saturday afternoon, I'm going to give myself 3 hours and get myself a short list of things that I want to apply for, or short list of things that I'm interested in, or short list of things that I missed last year but might be eligible for next year. So that's proactively finding things. There's also a way to kind of passively find things. So a big way that I hear about roles and jobs and things at the moment is from mailing lists. So there's a big one in the States called Sisters, spelled sisters as in systems, so SYSTERS, and that's a big mailing list. There's a UK equivalent called DAFNet, which is run by Imperial, and those mailing lists are fantastic for you to kind of just keep an eye on passively as they come in, have a read through them. Sometimes it's nice to see what women in industry are thinking, but often they'll put kind of obscure bursaries, scholarships, internship programs, graduate opportunities on those mailing lists. Another one is Ada's list, which again has a lot of things when they're looking for interns, when people are looking for interns or things like that, they post it up on Ada's list. Also setting up a Google alert might be something that you want to consider. So if you've not heard of them before, anytime you do a search on Google, at the kind of very bottom, I think it is right of the screen, there's an opportunity for you to set up an alert that will email you maybe once a day or whenever it happens and that someone mentions something. So we at the Stemette obviously have a Google alert on women in STEM and girls in STEM, but you might want to have a Google alert on bursaries for antenna engineering, which means that anytime there's a news item or anytime that there's a new result that comes up in Google that relates to what it is that you're interested in, you get an email and you don't have to be constantly Googling it. And again, it might be something that, every now and then it might email you something, once a week, twice a week that isn't relevant, but every now and then there'll be a gem that will come through that, Jaguar Land Rover have just launched a bursary and they've released this press release on it, and now you can then apply because you've seen it come up on the Google alert. So that's another way to let opportunities come to you. The last ones I'd say would be on LinkedIn. So there are a lot of groups on LinkedIn to do with whatever it is in any kind of field of human endeavour and careers, where they talk about women in mechanical engineering, or women in databases, or women in big data, or women in, I don't know, marine animals, or whatever it would be. So that's another way as well for you to keep an eye on what's going on and passively just see opportunities as they come out. And I will say that, there are a lot of opportunities out there. Not all of them are being pushed in the right way, or all of them are being publicised in the right way. So kind of it is worth the effort or the extra time of going and making sure that you're looking for them and you're trying to find them, because those people literally are crying out to be able to have access to you and to have you on their bursaries and on their scholarships and on their apprenticeships and on their graduate schemes. A couple more I was going to say on there, but I'll put them under my stage 2. So that was a big stage 1. Stage 2 is about enduring. So once you've got the bursary, or once you have got the scholarship, or you've got the internship, it's really important that the kind of opportunity that you've got, you make the most out of it. And with all of these schemes, so on my way up of doing the different internships, I think it was very clear. It was good to make sure that I had the view of it that it's as much about me as it is about the company. So it's not just about me making an impression, but it's about me looking to see what impression the company is giving. And that isn't necessarily just your manager and the relationship you have in your team, but it's also the people that you know around the company, the people that you get to meet who are like Yolanda and Sophie were just saying, people who are in different divisions, and you might not get the opportunity to rotate, but you do have time to go for coffees, you do have time to go for internal events, you do have time to kind of just ask people, you know, if you're in the lift or if you're on your way in or whatever, you know, whatever social situation it is, ask those questions. You've been given the opportunity to come inside the building, and you know, if it's not everyone that's able to just walk into all these kind of buildings, so use that to your advantage and say hello. Some of the people that I still meet with and talk to and have as my network at the bank now, I've known them since I was 16, since I came that first time, and I've stayed in touch with them. And it's literally just from being in the lift at one point, and now we'll look back and be like, oh, how do you know them? It'll be like, oh, yeah, we met in the lift that one time in that old building. And things like that mean that you get a better picture of what's available at the company and also at the organisation. But it also means that if you are having a tough day or if you are looking for your next career move, you've got a wider understanding of what's going on in the company or what's going on in that network, so you don't have to just, you know, go and fill out another form online to apply for a role. You can ask around, you can use your network. You've got people that kind of know you, trust you, and might even throw things like scholarship, and you get to interact with them. A lot of them, you know, people don't stay in jobs forever at the moment, so a lot of them will end up working somewhere else. And it's fantastic to make sure that you always leave a good impression, even if you're offered the job and you decide to turn it down. Leave a good impression, because those people will work elsewhere in due time, and you want to know that you've kind of got cheerleaders and you've got people that are remembering you from that scholarship or that bursary or that opportunity in the future. So that would be really useful. In terms of kind of finishing and closing out, oh, sorry, I was breaking out. Open on. Cool. I don't know, my screen seems to be tiny, so I can't see everything at the same time, but I'll keep going. So then the third stage of all of this is kind of finishing a next step. So you're not on an internship forever. You're not really on the grad scheme forever either. Even if you do stay on, you're not still considered a grad 10 years into your career. So in terms of finishing and rounding off the opportunities, make sure that you're thankful to people who have gone out on the limb, who have bought you coffee, who have done those things, and just a simple note just to say, hey, thanks. You know, we might not have worked together, but thanks for saying hello to me in the lift and not being awkward, or thanks for thinking of me when this came up, or whatever it would be. Make sure you connect on LinkedIn or follow them on Twitter. LinkedIn is fantastic because in the olden days, people used to have file flexes and write down numbers, and then we had email addresses, and you might have got the wrong email address, or they might have moved company and now you've got the old email address and you can't find them at their new company. But LinkedIn kind of stays with people and stays fresh. And LinkedIn is also a way for you to keep everybody else up to date on what you're doing and where you're going. And that is a way to kind of amplify the effects of having that bursary or that scholarship or that internship. If you've worked for someone or worked in an organisation with someone, and your LinkedIn posts that you post kind of keep them up to date on the fact that you've just graduated, or the fact that you've just won an award, or the fact that you've just, you know, gone on, finished your PhD, for example. It's a way for people to subtly, the same way as on Facebook, but now you know, certain people have kids or certain people bought a new car. It's a subtle way for them to keep up to date on you professionally, and then say, hey, I noticed you won this award, or I noticed you got this bursary. We're looking for, I noticed you've got this particular skill, or you were at this event. We're looking for people for our upcoming X, and you might be someone that's really good. I'll make the connection for you. And then that means that looking for schemes and trying to find schemes, now the schemes are coming to find you, which is a great way to do things. So I think that's it. The one other thing I was going to mention and kind of push to you guys as well is that when you're applying for schemes, and applying for bursaries, you want to make sure that you stand out. Andrew, let me know if I'm running out of time. Seems to be talking a lot. You want to make sure that you stand out. Awards are a really good way to stand out when applying for bursaries and for schemes. With awards, we need to make sure, so do apply. When you're applying for bursaries and scholarships, you want to make sure that you stand out. And awards like the Every Woman one that are coming up, or the WISE Awards that happen every year, a really good way for you to stand out. Also a really good way for you to kind of recognised by others. So in addition to being able to write, I was STEM Girl of the Year or whatever on forms, it's also fantastic because the people that run those schemes are also in the room when you're going up to pick that award. And so they'll recognise you. Actually, have you considered applying for this bursary or that scholarship? So that's the kind of other end, that's the other thing to consider. So I hope those tips were useful. Hope you got to get a cup of tea as well in our break. And I'll hand back to Andrew because I can see there are a lot of questions coming in.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I've had to change my setup slightly at this end, so I'm hoping that I'm not echoing too much for people. I'll keep my mic muted when I'm not when somebody else is answering a question. I'm hoping that Lizzy will be able to come back on the line, and hopefully Yolanda and Sophie too. Are you there, guys? Are you able to come back on? That's great. Good to see you. Just waiting for Lizzy's image there to come up. Ah, we're all here. That's fantastic. Great. Thank you very much for all your presentations, and thanks very much for answering a few questions. We've had a few posted. I think we may have lost some of them as we restarted, but if you need to repost those questions, then please do that. Lizzy, I just wanted to ask you, going back to what you were talking about with using your time during breaks and the summer, and actually making the best out of that. Have you got, I think of maybe the summertime as being the best time for not doing any work and not staying sort of focused on those things. Have you got any tips of how you can sort of keep yourself focused and sort of how does actually doing that work, how does it really pay off? If you're using your some of your summertime to do some of that research, how is it really going to pay off?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. So, I mean, something to think about is that summers are really, really long. At university, you get, what, 3 months off? And doing work for your undergraduate degree, like learning stuff and doing, example papers and doing lab experiments, etc., it's a very different environment to working in doing an internship in a lab. You'll be learning different skills, doing different things. It's no different to having, say, a summer job, which is the obvious other alternative. You're doing something slightly different with your brain. It's just that you're doing something that's a bit more focused on maybe your future and what you want to go into. And it's not like it would have to be the whole summer. I mean, I did an internship that was a month long, but I also did one that was only 2 weeks. So it takes time, and it leaves you other amounts of time for doing other things as well.
Your line is now unmuted.
I'm going to guess that Andrew is reading off the next question to Yolanda, possibly. Because you're on mute, Andrew, so I'll read it, I guess.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Did you always know you wanted to do something in electronics? What sort of mindset would you say you have to do it? And now you're muted, Yolanda. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, speak up a little bit.
I'll be a bit closer and shout. No, I didn't know I wanted to do electronics from the start. Straight after my A levels, I I knew I enjoyed maths. However, I didn't know what careers were out there, and that engineering was really something that I could go into with maths and physics. And afterwards, I actually went to go look at a catering course because I love baking, I love cooking, and that is something that I wanted to do. However, after having a bit of a rethink, I thought I should go into engineering, and I just keep cooking and baking to a hobby now, which I feel is best. And the type of mindset that you need for engineering is a very creative one, which I think I can bring in with the bakery as well. It's not generally seen as a creative subject. However, it is something that we try to tell people all the time, that very much thinking outside the box, doing things differently than normal. So I hope that answers the question all right.
That's great. Thank you very much. I've unmuted my mic this time, which is, I think, is the thing to do. My message and question is from Kit. It's for Sophie. It's about balancing workload with extracurricular activities. So, Sophie, how do you manage to do it? And did you feel an impact on those work-life balances as you went through your degree?
Yeah. So when I was in first year, I think as you go through the years at university, you have more and more work to do, like university work to do. So earlier on in your degree, you can get more involved in sports and societies and that kind of thing. And I just wanted to try everything. So I did rowing for 4 years. I did a bit of netball. I learned how to ring bells. All sorts of crazy stuff. But the way I kind of kept on top of it was I always kept a diary, sort of like a week's review on each page, open, separate from my timetable for my lectures. But I used to write down what I was doing every day at what time. So when I had some rowing practice, or like when I had dancing or something like that. That I could kind of think, okay, I know I've got these lectures today, and then I'd think, oh, I've got this going on at this time, so I'll have a bit of dinner for them. And then I kind of, by doing it that way, you can kind of see, oh, I think I've got a free hour here, or I've got another free hour in between my lectures here. And the kind of work that I had week to week was these kind of weekly problems in physics. So kind of like, a bit like homework questions really at school that would take maybe a couple of hours. So you could get most of those done just in little bits of time here and there. So you kind of keep your weekends free that way, which is quite nice. Yeah, it's just all about using any free periods wisely. But then also, by the time it got to 4th year, I was still doing a lot of stuff, and I could tell that I was really starting to struggle with fitting it all in. So I did drop one of my extracurricular things, because at the end of the day, it's most important to get your degree rather than go and do all the other stuff. So it's just important to keep that in mind and know when to drop something.
That's great. Thank you very much for that response. I'm not sure I can see any other questions there. I don't know if you can see any other questions, Anne-Marie. I feel as though I might have lost one when we disconnected.
Your line is now unmuted.
There was one from Jazz on Twitter. I don't know if we've asked that already. Did we? This from Jasmine earlier on. Let me see if I can just find it on Twitter. So you might have asked this of Sophie. How much computing/lab experience did you have in your degree? Did it have an effect on the path you chose?
So computing and lab experience. So for the computing, I did some in my 2nd year. I think I did some in my 3rd year as well. But by my 4th year, I didn't have any computing experience. But because I'd done a placement for 12 weeks in my summer, which was entirely computing, it didn't really matter that I didn't do that much in fourth year. So I had those bits of experience already to talk about. And for lab experience, by fourth year, I'd spent half of, because we had 6 modules to do, and 3 of them were dedicated to a project. The project that I was doing was lab work, so that's how much lab work experience I had. So was the question how that helps you to get a job?
Your line is now unmuted.
Jasmine, do you want to type that into the box? I don't know if it was whether it was to find the job. I think it was maybe just getting to grips with the job more than anything.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I think the computing skills really help for getting a job, because you can do jobs such as software engineering, things like that. And a lot of my friends who did the same course as me, they've all gone into software now. I mean, there's quite a lot of jobs in that field, but it depends really how you see yourself going at the end of your degree. And if you want to do more experimental work, like doing a PhD, then getting as much lab work as possible is going to be great for applying for that.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Can I just ask you a quick question, Lizzy? Lizzy, can I just ask you a question just about, you were talking about all grades are important. I think that's a useful thing to remember when you're looking at the whole path of your degree, and that's right from the very or through any of your studies, whenever you're studying. So that's another sort of a working out your planning. Was there any particular thing that you've learned to get better at as you've been doing your studies? So thinking that every grade counts, so that you've got a story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I sort of learned it the hard way, I suppose. I got a 2-2 in my first year of university and discovered that when I was applying for internship, after that, to do in the summer after my second year of university, they all wanted to know what you've got in your first year, and there are lots of schemes that say apply if you've got a 2-1 or above. Something I would say is sometimes it might say apply if you've only got a 2-1 or above. There's no harm in just applying anyway. They won't just automatically shut you down necessarily, particularly if you've got other things that you've done that you can demonstrate. You actually know what you're talking about. Say if you've done a piece of coursework that you're particularly proud of, or a group project that you think went really, really well, you can use that as evidence, and people will not necessarily see exam results as the be-all or end-all. But of course, being aware that exam results are important is useful, and it will make your life slightly easier. So it's not the end of the world, but it's a useful thing to bear in mind.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Lizzy. Thank you. I think we might have come to the end of the questions there.
I think there's one more question. Sorry, there's one more question that I've just seen that I want to answer. From Jessica from the States. So she's got a question that says it's more about post-grad life. How do you advance your skills? I know the job I currently have is a small step towards my career goals, but it's not where I want to be. How do I move forward and grow since I'm no longer in college, getting educated on things in my field? And I think I can answer this, and then I'll throw it to the other ladies. But I think for me, personal development and kind of career planning at the moment does come a lot from those mailing lists and from LinkedIn groups, and from the events that I attend. So it's less about going to lectures and going to see your careers advisor, but about just seeing what is out there, seeing what opportunities are out there, and learning more about your field and learning more about the new things that are happening in whatever it is that you happen to be doing. So that's how I advance my skills at the moment. I think Stemette is another thing that's been a big learning curve just in running it and running the organisation, and things go wrong and you learn from your mistakes all the time. And the big thing for me has been events for other professionals, and not just women in tech events, but kind of just technology events generally, rather than courses. I think there's a tendency when you first start in your career for people to send you on courses, which is good because book knowledge is really good and is fantastic. But kind of as you're in your career, there's a lot of stuff that you learn on the job and that you learn from kind of peers and others. I don't know if any of you guys have something to add to that.
Your line
No?
is now unmuted.
Kind of looked at each other quizzically. No? All right then, fantastic. So I think Andrew was going to say that we're going to bring the session to an end right now. I want to thank everybody for staying with us, despite the little hiccup that we had halfway through. I think it's testament to your deservedness in the field that you stuck on and you're back on with us. We are going to put the recording up on YouTube because we recorded both halves. So we'll do that and we'll stick them together. The last thing to say is thank you very much to our speakers. So that's Lizzy Johnstone from Cambridge and Yolanda Bullen and Sophie Hutchins from Selex. Thank you very much for also bearing with us and taking an extra 11 minutes off your evening. So sorry about that. I'm not going to thank myself. I'm going to thank Andrew for coordinating it and hosting. And thanks to everybody else. I've posted the feedback link in the chat on the left. So I think I'm pointing that way instead. And we're going to tweet it as well. If you've got any follow-up questions, do tweet them to us and we'll try and pass them on to the ladies or even pass them on to our wider network of women who follow us. Just tweeting the link to the feedback now as well on the Twitter. The next webinar is happening, I think, on November the 19th. So you can sign up for it there. Yep. Fantastic. Hooray, I knew. And that's it, really. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye now, everybody.